Hags, the quintessential evil monster in D&D. Hags are vile, disgusting, mysterious, and are always plotting. And most importantly for Dungeon Masters and Game Masters is that they, as much as any monster you'll find in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, come with an abundance of great plot hooks for your game. So, that's what we're talking about today. I hope you guys are ready. Let's get started. Welcome, adventurers! What's going on, guys? My name is Cody, and this is Taking 20, a channel about all things role-playing games. And today, we're taking a deeper dive into hags. I love hags, because hags and witches just scream fantasy to me. And the concept of an evil witch and witchcraft, which, let's be honest, is what the Dungeons & Dragons hag is based on, stretches all the way back to Greek mythology and is even mentioned in the Bible. So as Dungeon Masters, we have a lot of different places to pull inspiration from to use these hideous creatures in our games. But for now, let's take a look at them in the default setting for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, the Forgotten Realms. Here are some things about hags that we should consider before we start throwing them at our players. Hags are evil, with a capital E. Hags are at their very core an evil being. There is no gray area here with their morals or motivations. They revel in pain and suffering, and it physically brings them joy to see others suffer in misery. They love it, and they absolutely live to inflict torment on mortals. This is important for Dungeon Masters to take note of because so often we have to stop and think about what is motivating our monsters and villains. And with hags, we can just simply say that they act the way they do because they enjoy being evil. So at all times, hags should be working against good folk in your setting. They literally have no redeeming qualities about them. Hags love to bargain. Hags love to bargain with mortals, and this is one of the reasons that they don't just go around murdering everyone they come across. Because they enjoy suffering so much, it's often better for them to strike up a deal, one that usually has some pretty significant strings attached and that will allow them to prolong someone's torment. Hags also do not make fair deals. Make no mistake, a hag can actually be used to further one's cause. Perhaps they are willing to help you grow in political power or give you a magical cure that you desperately need to save a loved one's life, or even grant you a temporary boon so that you may defeat a dangerous foe. But no matter how good of a deal you think it is, or how insignificant the hag's terms might seem, they are always weighted in her favor. A hag's magic is very strange, even to those who are practiced in magic. In Volo's Guide to Monsters, we get a wonderful little section describing the unusual nature of a hag's magic. Specifically, it mentions that a hag might break a mirror to have the shards rise up to form a cloud of daggers, or pull a mummified toad from her pocket that casts a darkness spell when thrown into her cauldron. This gives us a really wonderful chance to immerse our players into the game by going into detail on the little unusual ways these hags use their magic. Also, it could be a great chance to throw off your party's spellcaster if they've picked up counterspell. Perhaps you could even make them pass an intelligence arcana check of DC 10 plus the spell's level to recognize if a hag is even casting a spell in the first place. Or perhaps if you're using Xanathar's Guide to Everything variant rules on identifying spells being cast, maybe you have your players make this check at a disadvantage if they've never encountered a hag before. Hags always have several escape plans. Hags are a monster that should frustrate your players if they attempt to kill them. Whether hags turn invisible, walk through walls to escape, or have a secret passage to the Feywild nearby, they should always have thought up ways to escape death. So if your party thinks that they can just smoke a hag out of her lair, they're probably wrong. Hag lairs are incredibly well defended. When attempting to hunt a hag back to her lair, the trip alone might prove deadly. This is a chance for Dungeon Masters and Game Masters to pull out all the stops to throw at your players. Use quicksand, use trees that burst to life, magical wards, a steep cliff that might crumble away leading to someone's death. All of these things might be in play when your players are attempting to confront a hag in her lair. Hags naturally attract minions. Having a small band of ogres or trolls under their sway is nothing unusual, and as such, hags are far more likely to use these creatures against any significant threat than by just coming to blows with a party themselves. This gives us dungeon masters and game masters a chance to beef up our encounters that our players might face when trying to go up against a hag. And finally, hag covens, which are always made up of exactly 3 members, can actually be comprised of a non-hag member. While it's certainly unusual, a hag coven may actually include an evil wizard or sorcerer instead of a third hag. This is a wonderful twist on traditional hag covens, and this alone could lead to some incredible roleplay scenarios for your players who just aren't expecting it. Now let's talk a bit about the different types of hags and how we can use them in our games. But first, I want to give a huge shout out to my sponsor for this video, Miniature Market. If you guys have never been to Miniature Market before, you owe it to yourself to go check them out. I personally shop at Miniature Market because they carry everything for gamers like me, and their prices are really unbelievable. And let me tell you, if you're a fan of the WizKids Icons of the Realms minis like I am, you won't find a better deal on them anywhere else. So go check out Miniature Market and thank me later. Okay, so let's start off with the Green Hag, which is probably the most common hag that we can use just based off of the fact that they can be found in nearby forests. Green Hags have, in my opinion, the best opportunities for direct roleplay with the party. Because they get the ability to mimic voices and disguise themselves with illusions, I think they lend best to deceiving the party and creating traps for players to walk into. Because they have a meager challenge rating of just 3, they fit right into low-level games or games where players are still at that folk hero tier of play, which I think can make them a much more personal monster to your players. And again, their goals don't have to be these big, wide-arcing, spread a plague across a continent type of story arc. They can be just as memorable for your players by inflicting a cruel fate on 1 or 2 unfortunate victims. Having a hag deceive the party by pretending to be a quest giver is a classic trope that can set the tone for a brand new game very, very quickly. Maybe she comes to the group as a young woman whose caravan was ambushed by a group of local bandits, begging them to rescue her beloved sister from their nearby encampment, only to find out that once they track down the group to a nearby cave, there are no bandits inside, but actually a pair of deadly owlbears or a fierce den of troglodytes that the party must find a way to escape from. Perhaps the hag hires the group to run a seemingly meaningless errand, only to find out later that she was using the group to further her own devious goals, asking the players to deliver a precious family heirloom as a secret gift to a cousin might not seem like a big deal, but after the group hears someone in town has been murdered and their prized sword just so happened to be discovered at a nearby competitor's house, leading to his subsequent arrest and death sentence, the party will realize very quickly just how badly that they were duped. And I wouldn't hesitate to even throw them into a game with first-level players. This is a great chance for you to bring into account the hag's propensity for bargaining. What if your players find themselves facing down a much tougher foe, perhaps a troll leading a small band of ogres and goblins that threaten to ravage a nearby village? But as the players are considering their options with how to deal with this threat, they're approached by someone in town, maybe even someone they've established a relationship with already, that there is a woman not too far away that may be able to help. Maybe you could even be so bold as to tell the players directly that she is in fact a hag. All the while, the person they're speaking with is this very hag. Maybe the town even faced a similar problem in the past, and the hag granted some other set of heroes powerful boons to defeat another invading force. But when they find this woman, she is more than happy to help grant them new strength in exchange for something mediocre, like giving her a single strand of red hair. But of course, this is a hag. As dungeon masters and game masters, our hags should always be plotting. So maybe she already knows that only one person in the nearby village has red hair, a beauty that she hopes to curse and disfigure. And when the players are finally gifted with their new strength to drive back the troll and his force, they soon find themselves in a field, naked and covered in blood, a gift of their newly acquired curse of lycanthropy. And DMs, don't let your players corner a hag without her attempting to negotiate for her life. Hags procreate by eating babies only to give birth to a new hag, which appears perfectly normal until their 13th birthday. So what do the players do if a hag offers to disclose which of the town's children are secretly hags in waiting? But of course, only if they let her live. And what do they do with this information when she tells them that an 8-year-old girl, who is, by the way, completely unaware of her true nature, is destined to become a vile creature of evil? Next up, we have the Sea Hag. This, of course, is our aquatic or coastal version of the Green Hag, and she has the lowest challenge rating of our hag variants. The one thing to take note of here is that Sea Hags are so hideous. Even though they can hide their true form under an illusion, even that still can't make them appear beautiful. So if you're looking for some other ugly minions to team up with a Sea Hag or even a Sea Hag coven, the Fomorian is an interesting choice that could fit the bill perfectly. Sea Hags speak both Aquan and Giant, so adding in a few huge and hideous giants led by a spiteful Sea Hag coven, and you can have an island campaign that could prove quite challenging for even mid-level characters. Of course, you can always pair the Sea Hag off with a few Kikoto and Sahagan in place of traditional ogres and trolls. Also, don't underestimate the Sea Hag's ability to instantly frighten the entire party with her appearance. Ideally, she would appear under her illusion as an old haggard woman. But as soon as the party gets close enough, she drops her illusion as a bonus action, attempting to frighten the entire party, giving them all disadvantage on all ability checks and attack rolls while she's within their line of sight. Next, enter into the fray some minions and have the hag attempt to instantly drop any frightened party members to 0 with her death glare. By the way, something she can do over and over again. And you have a very deadly encounter built in for your players. And if you're going to use a Sea Hag in your game, this is a great chance for dungeon masters to really set up some home field advantage for the Sea Hag, specifically with her ability to breathe underwater and her solid swim speed. If the players are having to go hunt down a Sea Hag in a cove, hidden away against a rocky cliffside, only reachable by a small rowboat, they better be prepared to breathe underwater themselves. Because frightened adventurers in heavy armors being dragged down into murky waters and trying to make checks at disadvantage to keep that from happening aren't long for this world. Next up, we have the strongest and, in my opinion, probably the most terrifying hag to face, the Bheur Hag. The Bheur Hag is in essence a frost hag and is found in wintry lands and snow-covered mountains. She isn't slowed by ice-covered terrain, and she can cast control weather once a day. For Bheur Hags, they revel in misery and evil deeds justified by the bitter cold. This sets up for a simple but effective, relatively isolated town being tormented by a nearby Bheur Hag, calling down relentless snows and forcing the village to hunker down indoors. But what happens when the players show up and have a cleric start casting create food and water for the village? How does the hag respond? Or what if the players need a way to traverse even higher into the mountains to face a white dragon? But in order to do so, they're told by the nearby village that they must bargain with the hag up the mountain, or else she'll make their journey miserable and dangerous. Hags are extremely cunning, so what would the hag ask for in exchange for protective magics against the deadly icy breath of the dragon, or better yet, information on where the secret entrance to his lair is? Remember, don't be overt with what she really wants. A hag should never tell the party exactly what she wants. This puts her in a position of power if she can keep the party guessing. she might absolutely feign her desire for one outcome while holding her cards close to the vest. She could very easily offer to grant the players a boon against the cold, one that might help them against a dragon, but not her and her sisters. And after she asks the party for a lock of hair from the nearby village's healer, the players are going to be thinking that she wants to harm or remove the cleric to ultimately hurt the town. But the truth is that she and her sisters want the party focused elsewhere. All the while, she and her two sisters prepare to follow the party up the mountain to sweep in and dispose of the party while they are still licking their wounds from dealing with the dragon. Then the Coven could finally get their hands on the powerful artifacts they've been unable to procure from the dragon's horde all these years. Or perhaps they even inform the dragon themselves of the party's ascent, in exchange, of course, for an item or two that the hag knows the party carries with them, and with the remaining loot naturally adding to the dragon's hoard. Next up, we have the Night Hag. The Night Hag is a great version of the Hag to mess with the party without them realizing even what's going on. I even like the concept of throwing this particular Hag at them while they are dealing with something else. Players can often overestimate their ability to heal and rest whenever they've finished up a quest or cleared out a dungeon. But when a Night Hag discovers a band of adventurers is headed to deal with the goblin warrens that have been ambushing travelers out on the road, she suddenly becomes filled with glee as she begins to haunt the dreams of the party's only healer. Your players, confident that they have the ability to clear out the pesky goblins, unexpectedly find themselves in serious danger of losing their cleric, as she isn't regaining any spell slots and her hit point maximum is dropping rapidly whenever she tries to sleep and rest. And a couple of things to take note of for the Night Hag is that unlike the Sea Hag and the Green Hag and even the Annis Hag, is that she doesn't alter her appearance with illusionary magic. She instead magically changes her shape, which makes her form much harder to detect. And she is technically a fiend, not actually a fae. So this should open up her set of minions considerably, depending on how you want to flavor your campaign world. Hellhounds, nightmares, and even mephits could be in play here, all of which will give the Night Hag a unique feel compared to a traditional Green Hags, ogres, and trolls. And finally, we have our last and large-sized hag, the Annis Hag. I really like the Annis Hag for many of the same reasons that I like the Green Hag. The roleplay implications here are tremendous. Statistically speaking, the Annis Hag is tough, but not overly complex. She's a large-sized brute that uses her size and brutality to often attract groups of ogres and trolls and gnolls and other goblinoids as a sort of den mother. But where she starts to become more interesting is in her affinity for children and desire to corrupt them into evil. Make no mistake, the Annis Hag is terrifying and operates a bit like Pennywise. In addition to corrupting children, she also hunts them, hoping to turn their soft skin into leatherworks. And she might terrorize the nearby village by leaving gruesome reminders of her trade nearby. The Annis Hag sets up as a bit of a Damien from the Omen scenario where children are becoming these evil monsters and actually hurting people. And this is great for dungeon masters that want to add in a little dark storytelling to their game. I mean, let's face it, as a father, anytime you start messing with children, it can have a pretty significant impact on the tone of your game, which is something that you'll want to consider before really diving into the deep end with this. So let's talk about throwing in a few twists for our hags to punch them up and make them a bit more interesting for our players. The first bit of advice I have is very similar to what we talked about in our Kill Your Party with Orcs video, and that's to mix up their motivations a bit. Take a look at your hag of choice and see if there is a way to avert their focus elsewhere instead of just inflicting their cruelty on unfortunate villagers. Perhaps they're interested in negotiating with the party, but because they are in conflict with another coven. What would happen if two covens were trying to recruit the same hag to be their third member? Or vice versa, what would happen if two hags were in competition with one another for a chance to join a coven that recently lost one of its hags. Also, hags can have their attention on any invading force to their territory. Perhaps a band of hobgoblins refuse to join with a particular hag, and as such, she wishes to decimate them. This could be a great double up against the party if she appears to be a simple quest giver, asking the party to dispose of the hobgoblins in exchange for an odd magical family heirloom, which of course is a cursed item designed to bring misery on the party once it's in their possession and they are long out of the area. Another fantastic way to spice up your hag coven was something that my brother Daniel threw at me a while back. One of the problems with hags is that they can be a bit of a glass cannon if you actually try to corner them and force them into a fight. What he did was very clever and made for an incredibly memorable encounter. When we finally reached the boss fight of facing down this hag coven, we knew that they would have access to a trove of magical abilities, but because we were level 10 at the time, we still felt pretty confident going in. When we arrived to the fight, the hags had lots of little creepy things all about in their lair, but something that we didn't pay much attention to was a few skulls with simple candles placed on top of them spread about in the area. As the fight began, we were having a tough time dealing with all the magics being thrown at us, but we knew we were about to kind of break through and drop one of the hags. We were even getting signs from our DM on just how badly she was starting to look. Of course, what happened when we finally dropped her? One of the 8 candles blew out and she stood back up at full health. Suddenly, we could feel the sense of urgency as we were fighting back the panic of our situation. It was simple, clever, and a really great way to put a twist on a hag coven if your players get to a point where they will try and directly engage with them. And finally, one of the best ways to spice up encounters with hags in your campaign is to completely buy into them being strange and weird. As mentioned earlier, hags use magic in unexpected ways, so this is a great time for us as Dungeon Masters to pull out all the stops in coming up with completely unique magic items for our players to discover. If you want to give out a mummified hand that always points to the nearest undead when given the command word, now's your chance. Or maybe even give your players a +2 longsword, but one that gives its wielder memories of those it's cut down in battle while they dream. Or maybe your players even discover a disgusting jar of worms that replenishes, but grants anyone who consumes a handful the ability to breathe underwater. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my amazing patrons who support me and give me the ability to keep making content like this. I love doing it, and if you guys enjoy what I do and you want to support me and get some exclusive rewards for yourself, head over to my Patreon page at patreon.com/taking20, and you guys can sign up over there. Now's the time to hand it over to you guys in the community. What are some creative ways that we can use hags? Specifically, what are some interesting things that a hag might request when bargaining with a group of players, and what are her real motivations behind it? I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. Also, what are some monsters that you guys would be interested in talking about next? Whether that's some of the more expected ones like mind flayers, or even if you have some unusual monsters you'd like to dive into like hook horrors or cave fishers, let me know. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I'd love to have you subscribe. Every week I'll be putting out new videos on GM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, just hit that subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.